The envelope was tucked beneath my door when I got home, a faint shadow against the worn carpet. I hadn't seen anyone leave it, nor had I heard a knock. It sat there, plain and unmarked, save for the delicate wax seal pressed into the center. A curious swirl that looked like flames frozen mid-dance. I hesitated before picking it up, the paper cold against my fingers as though it had been sitting outside in a frost that didn't exist on this muggy July afternoon. Inside was a single slip of paper, its edges singed and brittle. Meet at the bonfire, where the sparks whisper the truth. I frowned, rereading the words. No signature, no explanation. A joke, perhaps. But the handwriting, angular and precise, gave it weight. And then there was the date. Tonight. I had every reason to ignore it. Who would send such a cryptic note and why? But curiosity tugged at me with a force I couldn't resist. Maybe it was the monotony of my life urging me to chase something out of the ordinary. Maybe it was the unspoken allure of the unknown. The 4th of July was already suffused with its usual energy when I arrived at the fairgrounds. Laughter and cheers rippled through the humid night air, and the mingling scents of fried dough and scorched sparklers drifted from the booths and carts. The town gathered in droves beneath the sprawling darkness, waiting for the sky to explode into its yearly spectacle of light and sound. I tried to focus on the crowds, on the buzz of conversations, and the soft hum of carnival rides. But that small piece of paper burned in my mind, a quiet insistence that wouldn't leave me alone. The bonfire wasn't hard to find. At the far edge of the fairground, a small group huddled near a clearing that seemed removed from the festival's warmth. It was strangely subdued there, the sounds of the crowd muffled as though pressed behind a thick pane of glass. The bonfire itself was no longer a roaring blaze. It had collapsed into a nest of embers, their glow faint but strangely alive. As I approached, the heat radiating from them felt off, too cold, as if the warmth had been stolen by something unseen. Then the first whisper came. At first I thought it was the wind brushing past the sparse trees. But the voice was unmistakable, low and jagged, carrying fragments of words that I couldn't make out. Celeste. My name. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. The whisper was swallowed by the embers, their faint red glow flickering in time with the name. It was nothing, a trick of the fire, my mind filling in the gaps. That's what I told myself as I backed away. But the night seemed to press in closer, the shadows deepening as the whispers grew louder, layering over each other until I could no longer tell where they came from. "Who's there?" I called out, but the words felt feeble in the oppressive stillness. No one answered, yet I wasn't alone. Shapes moved at the edges of the firelight, flickering like mirages caught in the corner of my eye. They were gone before I could turn my head, leaving only the crackle of the embers and the growing weight in my chest. When the first firework burst overhead, the whispers fell silent. The night stretched taut, the silence beneath the fireworks unnerving. The world should have felt alive with celebration, but the distant booms only highlighted the void around me. The embers had cooled, their glow dimming until they were faint smudges against the dark ground. Yet the sensation of being watched had grown sharper, the shadows around the bonfire shifting in ways I couldn't explain. Truth. The word rose faintly from the embers, threading through the hissing remnants of the fire. I crouched closer despite myself, my skin prickling as the heat reached me. Not warmth, but a clinging dampness that made my breath catch. The embers pulsed faintly, forming shapes in the ash. Faces. They flickered in and out of existence, too quick to catch in detail, but unmistakably human. A young girl, her hair tangled, and her eyes wide with terror. A man, his face partially obscured by something charred and blackened. Each image lingered just long enough to fill me with a strange, suffocating familiarity. I stumbled backward, shaking off the spell. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the distant fireworks. The whispers began again, rising like smoke, tangling in my thoughts. The patterns in the embers shifted as I watched, forming not faces, but scenes. They danced and flickered, telling fragments of a story I didn't understand. A crowd gathered, their figures indistinct, but filled with dread. The glow of fireworks overhead, and then a fire, a furious blaze that devoured everything in its path. My stomach twisted as I realized the truth. These weren't random images, they were memories. Why are you showing me this? My voice cracked, sounding small and fragile against the darkness. The embers stilled for a moment, their glow dimming as though considering my question. Then, slowly, they began to pulse again. Shapes reformed, jagged and fractured. A single word emerged from the whispers, rising above the cacophony. Carousel. The fairground stretched quiet and eerie behind me as I turned toward its edge. There, half consumed by the encroaching trees, stood the forgotten carousel. Its paint was chipped and its animals frozen mid-leap, their eyes dull and unseeing. And yet, as I approached, I swore I saw the faintest hint of movement. A slow, grinding turn of the platform, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Behind me, the embers hissed their approval. The carousel stood shrouded in darkness, its chipped paint glinting faintly beneath the dull glow of the fireworks. The closer I got, the stronger the unease became, sinking into my chest like a weight. The rhythmic hum of the festival seemed worlds away now, the crowd's laughter muffled as though the air around me thickened. The whispers had followed me here. Faint and fragmented, they danced just out of earshot, rising and falling with the faint creak of the carousel's decayed wood. I paused, my breath hitching as the platform shifted again. A slow, deliberate groan as the entire structure moved a fraction of an inch. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, the words barely audible over the faint grinding of gears. For a moment there was only silence, oppressive and stifling. Then came the voices, not whispers anymore, but a low, guttural murmur that seemed to rise from the earth itself. They overlapped, broken fragments of pleading and accusation, layering into an unintelligible cacophony. The embers from the bonfire must have followed me, though I didn't remember seeing them move. They glowed faintly now, scattered in a crescent around the base of the carousel. The shapes in the ashes returned, swirling like smoke caught in a draft. Faces emerged and disappeared, each one filled with despair, their hollow eyes fixed on me. I stepped closer, drawn in despite every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn back. The carousel's once vivid animals, lions, horses, even a dragon, seemed warped now, their expressions twisted into sneers and grimaces. Their eyes, glassy and lifeless, seemed to follow my movements. Then I saw them. Figures stood among the animals, their forms half hidden in the carousel's shadowed interior. They were translucent, faintly shimmering in the dim light. At first, they seemed like static illusions, shadows cast by the flickering embers. But as I watched, they began to move, their motions stilted and unnatural, as though they were marionettes pulled by invisible strings. "Leave," one of them hissed, its voice raw and jagged. Another figure turned to face me, its hollow gaze piercing through the gloom. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out, only a thin wisp of smoke that curled toward me before dissipating. I backed away, heart pounding, but the crescent of embers flared suddenly, their glow brightening into a fiery barrier. The whispers rose into a frenzied wail, surrounding me, suffocating me. "Why are you doing this?" I choked, my voice trembling. A single word formed from the embers, the letters glowing red-hot in the ash. Truth. The spirits surged toward me, their forms flickering like broken projections. Their faces were distorted, features shifting and twisting with every step. They weren't solid, not entirely, but the cold radiating from them was real. It seeped into my skin, numbing my fingers and toes as I stumbled back against the carousel's platform. The embers burned brighter, forming new shapes, scenes I recognized now as the festival's forgotten past. A crowd gathered around a bright bonfire. Fireworks exploded overhead, their brilliant light reflecting on the eager faces below. Then came the accident. The firework veered wildly, spiraling into the crowd. Screams erupted as sparks rained down, igniting the grass and the surrounding tents. The scene shifted violently, smoke and flames consuming everything as panicked figures tried to flee. A single shape stood apart, its face obscured, but its hands clutching the mortar that had misfired. I gasped, recognizing the figure. I had seen that face before, in an old family portrait tucked away in my grandmother's attic. The person wasn't a stranger. It was my great-uncle. The embers hissed, the word guilt searing into the ash like a brand. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "It wasn't him. It couldn't have been." The embers swirled again, forming jagged, overlapping letters. Framed. I looked at the spirits, their hollow gazes still fixed on me. They were waiting, their silence heavy with expectation. I realized with a sinking dread that they weren't accusing me. They wanted something. "How do I help you?" I asked, my voice trembling. One spirit stepped forward, its form shimmering with barely contained rage. Its face became clear for a brief moment. A woman, her eyes sunken, but her features unmistakably human. Her lips moved, forming silent words before the embers flared again. "Justice." The carousel creaked beneath my feet as I stepped onto its platform, the wood groaning in protest. The embers' glow dimmed, shifting into a dull red pulse that matched the frantic pounding of my heart. The whispers coalesced into a single phrase, spoken in a voice that was neither male nor female, but something ancient and unrelenting. "Bring the truth to light." The realization hit me like a blow. They wanted the town to remember what had happened, to acknowledge the injustice that had been buried beneath decades of silence. The festival, the fireworks, everything was built on a lie. "I'll do it," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'll make them remember." The carousel stopped moving. The spirits froze, their translucent forms flickering one last time before dissolving into smoke. The embers extinguished themselves, plunging the clearing into darkness. But the air was heavy with a lingering presence, a warning that the task wasn't finished. The final fireworks burst in the distance, their light reflecting on the carousel's broken mirrors. For the first time, I saw my own face in the glass, pale, haunted, and marked by the weight of what I had promised. I turned back toward the festival, the distant sounds of laughter and celebration echoing hollowly in my ears. The truth waited, and so did the spirits. The walk back to the festival felt like a journey through another world. The bonfire clearing was dark now, its embers gone cold, and the path to the main fairground was swallowed by an unnatural quiet. Even the fireworks seemed muted, their bursts casting weak, fleeting light that barely pierced the oppressive gloom. With each step, I felt the weight of unseen eyes, the spirits lingering just beyond the veil of darkness. Their presence clung to me, an invisible chill burrowing under my skin. The word truth echoed in my mind, a pulse that matched my hammering heartbeat. When I reached the festival, the crowd was still gathered in the open field, their faces turned skyward to watch the final fireworks. The display was magnificent, golden sparks cascading like waterfalls against the night. Yet the joy on their faces felt hollow to me now, like watching ghosts mimic the living. I stepped into the crowd, my breath catching as the whispers returned, faint but insistent. They curled around my ears, threading through the noise of the festival. I flinched, the sensation sharp and cold, as if the spirits were urging me forward, their invisible hands pressing me toward the center of the field. The next firework exploded, its deafening boom momentarily silencing everything else. When the light faded, the carousel's shadow loomed in its wake, its jagged outline cast across the ground as though it had followed me here. My voice came unbidden, trembling but clear enough to pierce the revelry. "Stop!" The crowd turned, their laughter faltering as they noticed me. Eyes widened, whispers spread, and the weight of their attention pressed down on me like an avalanche. My mouth was dry, my body trembling, but the whispers urged me on, louder now, feeding me words I couldn't refuse. "There's something you need to know," I said, my voice breaking but steady enough to hold them. "This festival, this night, it's built on lies, on death." A murmur rippled through the crowd, uneasy and confused. I saw their faces shift, some with curiosity, others with annoyance, and a few with quiet fear. "It happened decades ago," I continued, my voice rising over the protests. "A firework misfired, killing dozens. But it wasn't an accident. Someone was blamed. My family was blamed. But they didn't do it. The truth was buried to protect the real culprits." The final firework shot into the sky, bursting in a violent red bloom. The crowd gasped, but their shock turned to horror as the crimson light revealed shapes rising from the edges of the field. The spirits. They emerged slowly, their translucent forms shimmering with otherworldly light. The crowd froze as the figures surrounded them, the whispers now audible to everyone. Low, mournful voices filled the air, weaving a story of betrayal, greed, and forgotten lives. One by one, the spirits pointed toward the festival organizers, descendants of the families who had profited from the cover-up. The accused paled, their denial faltering under the weight of the spirits' silent accusations. The air thickened, the ground trembling as the spirits pressed closer. I stepped forward, raising my hands. "Enough," I whispered, though my voice carried through the unnatural quiet. "They know now. They remember." The spirits halted, their hollow eyes fixed on me. For a long, breathless moment, the field seemed caught between two worlds, the living and the dead, suspended in fragile balance. Then slowly, the spirits began to fade. One by one, their forms dissolved into smoke, their whispers quieting until the air was still once more. The festival grounds were silent. The crowd stared at me, their faces pale and uncertain. I didn't stay to explain. My task was done. As I walked away, the final echoes of the whispers followed me, faint but resolute. The spirits had found their justice, their voices no longer lost to the void. But the weight of their presence lingered, a cold reminder that truth comes at a cost. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard the faint hiss of fireworks in the distance. The sounds were different now, softer and mournful, like a ghostly melody carried on the wind. And though I knew the spirits had gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't entirely over. Their whispers lingered, faint but insistent, a reminder that some truths can never truly be silenced.